What's up, gorgeous? I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to another episode of the Fierce Framework, where we talk about becoming fierce through messy action, baby steps, and growing your confidence. I'm your host, Mary Beth. I'm an ADHD kid who's a business coach, and I love working with other ADHDers who are building the business to support their dream life. So, I am all about helping you figure out how to keep going, find what works for you, how to not give up, and the inspiration to move forward, as well as strategies with how to make things doable and accessible and sustainable. So, if any of those sound good to you, I am doing free little mini sessions right now just to give us a chance to talk about your business, get to know each other a little bit more, and see if you feel like we're a good fit for coaching. So, I will include a link in my bio, excuse me, in the description. So, if that's something you feel would be beneficial to you or someone in your circle, then I would love to hear from you or them. Today, I want to talk about the concept of like self acceptance and how important it is. Speaking of the mini session, the coaching mini session, that will also sign you up for my email newsletter. And you can sign up for the newsletter separately if you want. Um, and I send out an email every Saturday morning with just like, I try to keep it bite sized. Sometimes I get long winded, you know how I am. Something that I just found like really helpful, or even just like kind of life updates. You already know I've been talking a lot about my trip to Belize. I just love like sharing that with you. So the newsletter is like, it's anything from like huge life lessons or like just things that I think are like relatable experiences. Anything that's like kind of come up for me that week that I feel like is going to be helpful for you. I drop it in an email and I share it with you on Saturday morning. So, love that. We've been talking in the email newsletter about self acceptance. And I just think it's so powerful because it's been a game changer for me. So, I struggled for the longest time, and I'm ADHD, right? Self-diagnosed. So, if that loses credibility with you, then don't take me seriously. I don't even know why I said that. Um, so struggled fitting in my whole life. Never really been normal. Don't know what that is, and suspicious regarding whether or not that actually exists. So, starting there, that's my foundation, right? But like for the longest time, I spent so much energy and like time beating myself up, like trying to figure out how I could be better. And if something didn't work for me, like this is like starting with school, like back in the day, right? If something didn't work for me, like common advice of the day or like a hot tip, if it didn't work for me, I assumed the problem was with me. And so my thought process would be like, how can I make myself better in order for this advice to work for me? Right. And something so just like random as trying to wake up earlier in the morning couldn't be me. Like as a kid, I was homeschooled. So as long as I like wasn't getting in trouble, I could pretty much sleep in. I just had such a hard time waking up early. And then my dad was like, if you just go to bed early, you're gonna wake up early. Like it's math and I love math. And I was like, that makes perfect sense. Duh. And to this day, that doesn't work for me. So, but it was like, that's just one example of how I was like, yeah, this is the advice. Like, this makes sense. This is the routine. This is a strategy that should work. And so, if it's not working, then that means there's something wrong with me. Okay, so now all I have to do is change myself so that the advice will work for me, right? So, I spent way too much of my life trying to figure out how I could change me so that the advice would work, so that the routines would work. 5 a.m. Club. Hate that book. Okay, I'm just gonna be. Don't tell the author. Hated it. But there's like a lot of good tips and input, right? I am not getting up at 5 a.m. I'm not sorry. Like it's just I'm not. It makes me hate my life. There's something about getting up in the night unless you're like gonna go to war, it's just not worth it. Like there's been a couple times when I've woken up, arisen, And it's like still dark outside, and something broken inside me is like, yeah, and I just feel like really accomplished. But 99.99% of the time, no, no. Having an alarm go off while it's still dark outside makes me want to go back to bed for the rest of my life. So, boom, right? So, this was more recently that I read that godforsaken book. Um, Actually listened to it on audio because ADHD. Oh, speaking of ADHD, what were you talking about? So for a second there, I was like, you know, oh, and then the advice of like, oh, just wake up like 10 minutes earlier every day and change your routine. First of all, in order to change your routine, you have to have a routine. And in order to have a routine, I don't know. I don't know. I have like vibes. I have like what's like tides. We go with the tides. Follow the moon around here. I don't even know what's what we're following. So routines are hard for me because like mine don't look my routine is more of an outline. Okay. So 10 minutes early compared to what? Because I currently have three alarms that I set in the morning, and this is so embarrassing to admit. I have three alarms that I set in the morning that are 45 minutes apart. And to my incredible discouragement, this morning, for example, I had alarms going off for like an hour before I got up, and I am not open to feedback. I know that's terrifying, and I know that there's a lot of room for improvement, including don't set your first alarm so early. I'm not in a mental space to accept help on that subject at this point. Let me live my life. And by live my life, I mean fight for it. Anyway, but like that's an example, right? So when it's like, oh, just start, 10 minutes earlier every day. I'm like, okay, cool. Where in that hour do I bump up 10 minutes? So I hope I've given you enough examples from my shit show of a life so that you can find something if you struggle with this to cling on to relate to lock in on, because what I want to talk about is that doesn't work. That doesn't work for me. May or may not work for you. If it does, God bless. So my mind-blowing alternative is, hey, maybe find something that works for you. Maybe do shit that works for you and don't do the shit that doesn't. That's my hot take, I guess. Um, yeah. One of the things I hate about podcasting is sharing my revelations with you and hearing how elementary they sound when I say them out loud. But I know I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one. And I have heard podcasts, read books, you know, social media videos, right? Like TikToks and stuff where it's like the person will say something super basic or even something I already know. But it's like, "Ah, I just need to hear that, or like the way they explained it." So I am trusting that there are people out there as well who are not rolling their eyes like, yeah, bitch, we know. Okay. So, um, also I just wanted to like talk that out so you could see. Maybe I could have like given you a heads up, but this is kind of my brand of like authenticity, right? Of like letting you know like, hey, I feel stupid telling you do shit that works for you. I hear myself and I know that sounds elementary and that we should all know that. We all know that already, okay? And my like authenticity moment is admitting that. And like, yeah, I'm having this feeling where I'm like, this is so dumb, dude. Like, everyone already knows this. If you're going to have a podcast, you need to say something more profound. But then also letting you know, like, hey, I am trusting that this is actually something somebody needs to hear because I've been there. I've been there where I know shit and you just had to hear it again or in a different way or like whatever. And you're like, okay. It like starts clicking, right? Or like, you know it, but you don't like believe it. Like it hasn't sunk in yet. And maybe you need to hear it a couple more times. So, boom. But I also like wanted to talk that out with you because part of my role as a coach, right, is like showing you that you don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to have a groundbreaking revelation every time you open your mouth, every time you share something on social media, every time you get on your podcast, every time you write your blog, right? Like it doesn't have to be a new idea. It doesn't have to be a crazy intense concept. You don't have to be like breaking people's minds with your ridiculous intellect, okay? You can iterate things that everyone already knows and share your story of how it's working for you or what new little like gem you found within that or what it means to you, okay? And people will still benefit from it. I know that because I do that all the time. Okay. I benefit from stuff I already know all the time. And side note to that, this quote came up in conversation with my brother earlier, and I love it. The quote is, "You cannot learn something you think you already know," or something like that. I'm not reading it. Um, okay. That has been an incredibly important kind of mindset shift for me as well because I had a phase where I was like so arrogant. I'm hoping it's a phase. I feel like it's over. I don't feel arrogant anymore. Um I had a phase where I was like so arrogant and I was so irritated because it seemed like everything I was supposed to be like learning, everything that every like speaker I listened to, I was like, I already know this. I already know this. And I was getting like so irritated because I was like, I already know this. And fortunately, I've matured a little bit. And now it's like, okay, maybe I've already heard this before, but there's something I can learn from it. Maybe either like a different way that I can implement it or implement it like more, integrate it into my life more. Or maybe there's like a side note of this conversation that maybe I've heard the general concept, like the main point, but maybe there's a bullet point in there somewhere that I actually hadn't heard before. So a because of my experience, I know I can learn from things that I've already heard. Yeah, even if it is like being open and searching for learning something new within pretty much every context, right? So yeah, that side note was to like encourage you that you can have a podcast because I've had this podcast for like, I don't know, more than a year and still have these moments where I'm like, this is so embarrassing to like admit that this is like a revelation for me. And it is, and that's fine. Okay. And it's still going to help people. So here we are. So if you have something to say it, even if it seems silly and elementary. And part of why I bring that up is because like this is like the fifth time in a couple weeks where I've had that like distinct, like, oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. This is like embarrassingly elementary. I don't want to say this out loud. And I've been practicing saying it anyway. And so part of that is my commitment to, I know authenticity is a buzzword now and it's like so annoying and we're probably all so sick of hearing it. But like that is my way of walking out authenticity, just like being fucking real and being like, yeah, this is where I'm at. The words that I'm saying right now make me feel stupid. Okay. And that's okay. We're going to work through it and we're going to say it anyway because part of what entrepreneurship is just like personal development on steroids with the goal of making money. I might make a TikTok out of that. Entrepreneurship is personal development on steroids with the goal of making money. Like the whole thing is d- getting your shit together, like facing your fears and working through insecurities and like showing up and being seen and being willing to be perceived and like dealing with haters and like people who don't get it but have shit to say. Like, okay, that's my rant. So we're bringing it back. Self acceptance is what we're talking about. And like, it's so important. Literally, like, one of the biggest things for success. I don't consider myself like successful yet, which that's a different story, right? There's definitely wins to celebrate. I'm not talking shit about myself, but like, I'm still in corporate, right? And this is my side business. So I don't consider myself successful yet. So it's weird to be like, one of the biggest factors in success. But I will say, like, a key ingredient in making my life better, which having a life that feels good is success. Okay. That tastes like success. So we'll take it. And like easing my stress and overwhelm and just like freak out factor has been finding things that work for me and doing things in a way that works for me instead of trying to change myself to fit into whatever the advice of the day is, whatever the experts are saying, whatever I'm telling you, right? If it doesn't work, please be like, we're not doing that. And then don't do it. Amazing. If you were trying to like force yourself to do something because I said it, even though it wasn't working for you, I would be so sad. Because what I want is for you to have the version of success like that counts as success to you, like whatever your definition of success is. And I can't imagine that your definition of success includes trying to pretzel yourself to fit into some advice that I gave, right? So I do try to use language that shows that I'm mostly speaking like from my experience or from things that I've learned from other people, right? And it's more like, come on this journey with me and like this is what worked for me and let me share my story as opposed to like this is what you should be doing. So I hope that's clear, but if it's not, I just said it. Okay. So whether that is not waking up at 5 a.m. or whether that is having more of like, ooh, one of the things I love, instead of like a to-do list, a menu of options. I can't tell you how many times I read, heard, whatever, saw read that like you should be time blocking your days and like do content creation on Mondays and then meet with clients on Tuesdays and then do marketing on Wednesdays and like no 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 no, or even like these 2 hours I'm going to record my podcast and then these 2 hours I'm going to record my TikToks for the week and then these 2 hours I'm going to record my blog. I don't know, that's not real. But, and then you get to that day and every like hour is blocked off and you have all the things that you're supposed to be doing and you like sit down and you're like, "Yeah." And your brain's like, "We're not doing that." And you're like, "Oh, what?" The calendar says this is what we're supposed to be doing. And your brain's like, "Since when have I ever cared about what's on a calendar?" Okay? Um I used to do that. And then I'd be sitting there in front of the calendar. You've even seen, if you've watched a lot of these podcasts, there's been a couple times where I straight up be like, bro, I've been sitting at this desk for an hour making myself just sit here until I record this stupid podcast. And sometimes like your brain is just not there, right? And so it's like A, you wasted that hour, right? B, if you're not in the headspace for whatever you're doing, it's probably going to be not as high quality, um, not as easy for sure, right? Boom, just off the bat. So if we can work with ourselves, and sometimes why I do that is because I wait till literally the last minute and I'm like, bro, if you don't record it now, you won't have time to edit it and get it out by Wednesday when you promised yourself you'd post the podcast. So, like, sometimes it comes to that, right? But in an ideal situation, if it's just an arbitrary, like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing for these 2 hours because I time blocked it off in my calendar based on somebody else's advice and it's just not working for me, then do something that works for you. Okay. So I do have like general times of when I'm planning on working on my business because that's been really important for me is like set aside those times. And that works for me to have time set aside when this is what I'm planning on doing. But then instead of specifically having like one thing that I have to do during that time slot, I love a menu of options. And so like instead of like a to-do list, it's still a to-do list. But it's like a menu, right? And I'm just like, oh, that yes. So I have the reminder because sometimes I don't remember all the things that I need or that are like important or that I decided I wanted to prioritize when I was planning, right? And in the moment, sometimes my brain just goes blank and I'm like, what even should I be working on? And I'm like, oh, let me research social media. And then you're on TikTok for 4 hours. Just me? Okay. Well, that happens. So having that like menu of options, and I'm like, oh yeah, oh snap, I forgot that I still needed to like write one more newsletter for this month. I'm in a writing mood. Like I feel like I could do that. Let me do that. Or if it's like, oh, I need ideas for social media videos or like TikToks or whatever, you're like, okay, yeah, I'm feeling a little creative. Like, yeah, let's get those creative juices flowing. I can come up with ideas. I'm in a headspace to brainstorm. Boom, I can do that. So little things like that where it's like, do what works for you. And in order to do that, you have to accept how you are. If you are neurodivergent, ADHD, and you keep trying to force yourself to operate as a neurotypical person, you're gonna have a bad time. Ask me how I know. So one of the linchpin, like the critical thing for my success that I'm on the way towards is that just accepting how I work, bro, and letting that be okay instead of beating myself up and be like, well, I should be different. Well, this should work for me. Like, it doesn't. Okay. I'm not saying whoever gave that advice is trash. Like, I'm not boycotting them. I'm just saying it doesn't work for me. No hate, no harm, no foul, right? Like, so accept yourself because you have to have that foundation of accepting yourself in order to allow yourself to do the things that work for you. Because if you're constantly rejecting yourself and saying that like you're not good enough and that you should be changing, then you're not going to be as open to implementing and like filtering the things of what works for me, what doesn't, and doing something that works for you, even if it is not in alignment with what they are saying, with the common advice of the day or what everybody else is doing, right? You have to accept yourself in order to take that next step of being like, okay, this works for me. And that's good enough because I accept me. Instead of assuming that I'm broken and I need to be different, I am accepting myself and be like, this works for me. Great. That doesn't work for me. Okay, not doing that. You see what I'm saying? Because like if you don't accept yourself, then it's the whole thing of like, oh well, I should anyway. Or like, oh, the only reason that doesn't work for me is because I'm not a better person. Like, and you have all this noise, right? Which I dealt with for decades. Bro, being at 36 is crazy. I'm like throwing around the term decade like it's going out of style. Yikes. Okay. So self acceptance. And then you might have noticed I snuck in there the next step, right? And that is one of the huge things I want to talk about as well. I talked about this in one of like my very beginning episodes, and I am not gonna lie, I was so impressed with myself for this analogy. So, I live in Colorado, and I am not a rock climber. I'm also just not an athletic person in general because, yeah. So I'm basically the worst Coloradan. I also don't snowboard or ski, so don't cancel me. Or do, I don't care. Yeah, so rock climbing though, it's a cool analogy. And it ties in with accepting yourself. So my point here is that you have to accept where you are in order to make progress and to get to that next step. You have to accept where you are. And by accepting, I'm not saying you have to be happy with it. Like I was just saying, I don't really feel like I'm successful yet, right? I'm accepting where I am, and I'm so much further along than where I came from. And I'm proud of myself, bro. Like there are wins that I celebrate, okay? And there's still a long way to go. All right? So accepting yourself, accepting where you are doesn't mean that you never want to go anywhere else. It doesn't mean that like this is the destination and everything's done and like you're resting on your laurels. No, you can accept where you are and like realize and acknowledge it. Maybe those are better terms than accept, right? Like acknowledge where you are and be like, okay, in order to get to that next step. So maybe like acknowledge or realize where you are. Those might be like better terms depending on what terminology works for you. But like you don't have to be happy with where you are, and you definitely don't want to you don't have to want to stay where you are in order to accept where you are. It's just an acknowledgement of like, hey, I'm just now starting out my business, or I am posting my first TikTok, or I am writing the first outline for my first book ever, or I am transitioning, from one business to something else. I'm pivoting, I'm doing this, I'm quitting corporate, I'm traveling, I'm like just acknowledging where you are in your journey. Hey, I'm just beginning, or I am preparing, or I am taking this baby step. And then that helps you figure out, okay, what is the next step? Because the next step is one you can reach. And this is where the rock climbing analogy is so cool. Because say you're on the ground, right? And you're just starting, you're not even on the wall yet. You got your little harness and your gear and ish, and you're like, all right, what is the first step? I actually have no idea. I'm just kind of guessing. Handhold, right? Like you have to get on the wall so you can start pulling yourself up so you can even get your feet on the wall. So, again, guessing here, you're probably not going to like put your foot 3 feet off the ground, first step, no hands. That is not your next step. You might have your harness on, you might have your gear, but that's not your next step. Your next step is going to be what can you reach? What is within your grasp? Where can you go from here? So you have to know where here is and accept the reality that you are here in order to identify where can you go from here. Okay. So that's kind of the first step is like acknowledging where you are and asking like, okay, so what is within my reach then? Where can I go from here? And I also want to encourage you like wishing doesn't help, right? Or like fantasizing about how perfect that handhold 20 feet above you is. And you're like, ah, man, if I could just grab that handhold, my life would be so much better. Like, yeah, I should be at that handhold right now. And like, that's where I should be. Actually, I've been on this wall for like 10 minutes. Why am I not there? Dang, I really should be further along. Why am I not doing better? That's what I should be grabbing. I don't want any of these handholds right in front of me. None of these options that I can reach are interesting to me. So I'm just gonna sit here and be like, wow, I really wish I was there. That's not that's not gonna get you up the wall, baby. That's, do you know what I'm saying? And you're putting like so much energy and attention into that. And there's nothing wrong with that being along your journey. There's nothing wrong with that being further down the road and you're just not there yet. And there's a healthy way to do that where you're like hyping yourself up, right? You're visualizing, you're dreaming, like I'm not hating on that. But like wishing, be like, this next step isn't good enough for me. For example, building an audience. I'm spending a lot of time on TikTok recently, and there's a lot of people talking about like how they wish they had higher views or they wish they had a bigger audience, right? And it's like, yeah, okay. So what are you gonna do? Are you gonna quit because you wish you had a bigger audience and you don't, so you're just gonna quit? Or are you going to like just complain about it? Which I mean, I guess if you're making videos complaining about it, you're still creating content, so maybe, right? You're still working on that. Or are you going to keep trying? Are you going to look at what is performing well and what isn't, and maybe do more of what's performing well or less of what's not, or just being consistent so you get enough data to actually see, like, hey, am I just gaining traction? Is this just something that needs a little bit more time? Or is there something like a real opportunity for me to improve? Right. And so, like, that's what you can be doing to keep going instead of just like wishing you had more viewers, you had a bigger audience. Like wishing isn't going to help us. Okay. So what can you do? What actions can you take? Right. For example, I was going to have a guest on every other episode. And this would be the episode where I'm supposed to have a guest, and that just didn't happen because I didn't plan ahead. Okay, and I've been in a weird like transitional space right now, and yeah, I just like didn't have within me to reach out to people and schedule something and do an interview and I let that be okay. That was a compromise I was willing to make. I was like, I'm still gonna push the podcast out and I'm just not gonna have a guest. It's not a promise I made to anybody else. It was just kind of a idea that I thought would be cool for me. And so like I'm okay letting that go. And here we are, right? So without a guest, without an interview, I can't make myself put out a podcast episode with a guest. The first step, the next step would be finding a guest and then interviewing them, right? So, since I have not found a guest and I don't have an interview with a guest right now, my next step is not posting a podcast with a guest because I didn't do the preceding steps. Like, that's not the next step. That's a couple steps down the road. And will I do that step? Yeah, absolutely. Soon. I'm obviously going to interview another person ever in my podcast, right? Like, but it's not the next step right now. And that's okay. But like wishing I was there or pretending I was there or telling you I'm going to put out a podcast today with an interviewee when I don't have anyone is crazy. So wishing and beating myself up for not being further along isn't doing me any good. Okay. And along the same lines as that, comparing doesn't help us either. Okay. This is one of those things that we all know and we just can't hear enough times. Okay. Comparing doesn't help you. Okay, say for example, you see somebody in their climbing wall on Instagram, right? And they've got a picture of their climbing wall and they have this beautiful handhold. I don't even know what that means. But like it's just like, wow, it's a perfect handhold and they look so good and it looks so beautiful and you wish you were there and you're sitting on your walk wall on Instagram and you're like, "Dang, if like I should be there." You don't even know where that wall is. That might be in a different state. It might be in a different country, right? You might not even have that option available to you right now. They might be going up a completely different wall. They might be taking a completely different journey. They might be taking a completely different journey. So why would you be where they are? If you're not going to the same destination, why would you be taking the same steps? Okay. I just feel like someone needed to hear that because we want to compare and take advice and follow people and implement feedback from people who are doing things and going places that we have no interest in. Okay. So comparing, everybody's on a different journey. You might not want to go where they're going, and you might not have that option, right? They might be, even if you are going the same place, they might be on step 45 and you're on step 3. Okay. So you're just not there yet. The next step after 3 is 4, not 35. Okay. So again, along the same lines of wishing, comparing doesn't help us. Even if we're going the same direction, even if we think we're going to the same destination, right? Not we're all at different points in our journey. And then you have other factors such as like speed, right? Like people are going at different paces. So maybe someone on the climbing wall is like more athletic or they're taller and they can just literally reach things. Or maybe they're like a kid who's getting a boost from their parent, right? And so they actually skipped the first couple rungs because they started higher because they had some kind of help that you don't have. Just like in real life, we have different privileges, we have different opportunities, we have different strengths and supports, right? It's not going to look the same as someone else. So tying that all back in to accepting yourself and where you are and who you are and what you're doing and what works for you. The like bow I want to wrap this in is once you're accepting yourself and where you are, then you can start making like a real impact on figuring out like, hey, okay, what works for me? What do I need to take that next step to get to that next milestone? What supports do I need to put in place? What opportunities do I have available to me? What is my next step? What can I reach? What action can I take? And I also believe that that ties into what's going on today. Okay. I know I don't talk about it a lot because I do believe that we need content outside of politics and the crisis that our world is in right now. It's not because I don't care. It's not because I'm not pissed. Um, I find that I'm angry a lot. And when I'm angry, I don't have a lot of constructive things to say. And someone taught me that if you can't say something nice, don't say nothing. Um, so it's not that I don't care, and it's not that I'm not doing anything. I don't feel like my calling is to rage about humanitarian crises on social media. So there's that. But I do feel like this concept also ties in with what's going on in our world because it is very easy to get overwhelmed or to think that, like, we shouldn't be here in the first place. Or, we should have voted differently. Or they should have, or I could have, or blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, and I'm not mad at any of that. Like, I have all those thoughts, okay? And that's human. That's fine. But when it comes down to go time, what can you do? What can you do? What is within reach? What is accessible to you? Because I know for me, staying informed can very easily turn into doom scrolling, getting overwhelmed, and ending up shutting down and not actually doing anything, all for the sake of being informed. What is the point of being informed if I don't have anything left to take action? Okay. So sometimes there's a little less scrolling and a little less consuming the news so that there can be a little bit more action. And so I want to encourage us. I know it seems daunting and I know it can feel hopeless, and there is so much work to be done, and you're not going to do it all by yourself. Okay. We all play a role. So, what can you do? What is that next step? What can you reach? What action can you take to take just that next step? And then you'll go from there. Then you do the next thing and you do the next thing. But for right now, you just do this next thing. What can you reach? What is within your grasp? What step is next for you? All right. It's a lot. It's heavy. But I love you so much and you're doing so great. And I'm so proud of you. Oh my God. I can't wait to see where you take your business. So I hope you stay in touch. Since I'm not using my normal intro and outro, let me reiterate a couple things. I do have slots open for my mini coaching session so we can connect and see if we vibe and see how I can help you out so we can schedule some recurring sessions, some real, not mini sessions, but we always start with the free mini one because who doesn't like free stuff? And I feel like the mini just kind of takes the pressure off, right? It's like, anyway, like an intro, right? But I don't want it to be like a weird sales call, so it's not. It's just like a mini coaching session. Okay, I will include that link. Also, you can sign up for my newsletter if you want to get emails from me every week because we love to chat over here. And those are really the biggest announcements that I have. Yeah. As always, I love to hear from you. If you have any feedback, questions, concerns, I don't know, I will do my best to address your concerns. Questions, feedback, yes. I'm open to concerns. I just don't. That just slipped out. I don't know what I would do with them. Figure it out. You learn as you go. Practice what we preach here. Um, yeah, this is the coolest outro I've ever done in my entire life. Yeah, so I will see you in 2 weeks. I actually kind of outlined a bunch of cool ideas, so I don't know when the next time I'll have a guest is because I'm hogging the mic right now and I'm loving it. And yeah, stay in touch. I've been goofing around on TikTok recently. I don't know. I'm just trying to kind of be a little bit more free spirited over there. So if you're a fan of shenanigans and TikTok, make sure you're following me. I'm at the Fierce Framework on everything. Try to make it easy for you because I know how you are. All right. Well, I love you. Have a wonderful week. Until next time, keep becoming fierce.